Hey friends, back with you again here. This is teaching number 2 on values, which if you didn't pick up on it last week, I really like teaching on this. I like talking about this because it has made such a big impact on my life. I would say, as I was preparing the teaching, one of the things I thought about, for so many of us have had the opportunity to be around this ministry and so many things that the Holy Spirit's done in our life and the Lord's done in our life to bring healing and transformation. My experience of articulating and then living out of these values has been I want to say more significant in terms of the transformation of my life than the healing. It's hard to say, but it has at least been that significant in how much it has changed everything about my life, the way I live my life, my relationships, my health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, on and on and on. And so I get to have another teaching on this. This is the second of 2 teachings on values. And so let me review a couple things from last time. First, the main point from last time, which I told you last time is going to be the same main point as this time, and that is, whatever it takes, it is worth it to make the investment, whether time, finding a babysitter for the kids or whatever it is, to make the investment to articulate and then live out of your personal values. It is, whatever it takes, it's worth it. If at this point, you haven't started working on that yet, I'm going to give you a couple of things at the end to be working on, actually instead of questions, and so I hope that's helpful just to be intentional about it. So the other thing I just want to review and make sure that you remember this from last week is that these values aren't what we often talk about as values culturally. That what we're talking about here, to use Terry's definition, is non-negotiable commitments. What we're talking about of our values are our non-negotiable commitments. And so I want to go through and I want to talk a little bit about my experience articulating my personal values and then moving into it. So I'm going to say I didn't go back and look and see when this was, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, Terry did a teaching in, it was north of Columbus. It was a 2-day thing, Friday and Saturday, called Living Out of Your True Self. And it was the first time that, we'd chat about these kind of things. I was working for Terry at the time, but it was the first time that he'd really taught a lot that I had heard about that when I had been there, at least maybe just that it registered with me, that he had. And it clicked. And so we were talking about it one time. We were back here in Ashland and talking about it. And so he started to challenge me to articulate these. What are your personal values? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what those, if I had to make a list of 4, 5, 6 non-negotiable commitments, I don't know what that would be. I had some guesses. And so he left, and then about a month, or left me to work on that, and maybe a month or 2 later, he circled back, hey, how's that coming? And I'm like, I didn't really get too far on it. And then a month or 2 later, he circled back again. Hey, how's that going? And I was finding that I just couldn't get these done. And one of the things was that one of the, difficulties of it was making the time to do it. I wasn't making it a priority. But the other is, it's just really hard. It's hard to articulate these. If you've done this already or started, or maybe it's what's keeping you from it, it is challenging to do this. And so it took me a year from when he first challenged me to start on it until I got him done. It was literally 1 year. And I got it done, and then we talked about it, and every once in a while he'd ask me how I'm doing with those. And So I got this done. I'm going to list these not because there's anything special about my values to anyone other than me, but just to give you some ideas. If you're having a hard time, it's like, well, I'm having, what fits into that category? Here's what, to me, I have 6. Here are my 6 non-negotiable commitments. They are the journey with Jesus, family connectedness, fellowship with a few close friends, living out my calling from Jesus, financial wisdom. And I'd say, something about that is not just, sometimes financial wisdom is being generous, and that was financial wisdom was one that was, I had to really work to get that articulated. And then physical wellness. So for me, those are my personal values, which, by the way, I know there's supposed to be 3 points. I don't have 3 points. So there's, I don't know, just doodle in those boxes where you're supposed to put the 3 points. This is much more story. You can make the story fit into 3 points, I guess. But anyway, okay. So I articulated those, starting to live out of those, and I want to share an example post articulating those. One is me not living out of them and ending up in a ditch, and the other, me living out of them and finding peace and joy even in the midst of difficult circumstances. The first one was an experience of not living out of my values. I don't remember how many years ago this, I'm going to say this goes back about 3 years. Terry had written a program that maybe some of you are familiar with called POE, Pastors of Excellence. It was done at the seminary. And they had discontinued the program. And we had decided at the time I was leading HCM International, we decided we were going to put together a program that was in the spirit of POE. And so we launched into this and pulled together a couple of our board members, different people that have been involved in POE, and I was spearheading this campaign to launch a program in the spirit of POE. And it was a fail. It was just a complete fail, not because of anyone else's fault, but my role as steering the ship, I just blew it. People put time into it, they invested time and energy and thought, and it just didn't go anywhere. And the fault completely was on my shoulders as the leader at that point, did not pull it together well. And so we get to the end of this, and I don't remember, maybe 6 months went into this. And I'm kind of licking my wounds at the end, feeling bad about myself. I mean, I don't know anybody that likes to fail. But especially, I was really excited about this, and I failed, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't even really become a thing. And all these people invested time. I felt terrible. Anyway, so Terry and I talked through that, and he's like, but we had some good ideas that came out of it. So he encouraged me to keep pushing ahead through it. So I started talking with Mike Parker, who you all know through this program, is the director of this program. And we shifted the idea a bit to something that we called Realign. Still a program for pastors, still in the spirit of POE, but had some significant changes that we really felt good about, that it became a something in our minds, and on paper, and in the brochure, it became a something. And so we started promoting this, and I put a fair amount of time and energy and some expense into marketing materials for Realign. Some of you may remember me doing announcements or getting a brochure or something. And it was a great, it had the 5 A's. There was an A in Realign, and it was, it was a neat little logo. And so I was so excited about this, and we rolled it out, and it was completely another fail. We rolled this thing out, and people would come up at seminars, and they'd ask questions about it, but it just completely failed again. And somewhere in the midst of all of that, I made this inner vow. Now, if you're not familiar with what an inner vow is, you really should be, because we pretty much all of us do it, and we usually don't realize we do it. And the inner vow I made is that it doesn't matter what it takes, Realign is going to become a program, and we're going to get the people we need to make it happen. I think we needed like 22 pastors to run the program like we had written it. And I made a vow to myself that whatever it took, this thing was going to happen. Now, that's not a good vow to take. There's a lot better promises you can make to yourself than that one. And so there was this one day, one of the things I had done was I made this paper and I put it up above my computer, so every time I looked at my computer, it was like I saw the scorecard. And it had, I think it was 22, of these circles on it. And my plan was, every time a pastor signed up for it, I was going to put an X in one of those circles. And I could just watch this go along. It's in front of me, driving me the whole bit. Well, month after month after month goes by, and up on my paper there is one X. One person had signed up for the program. And I was traveling and talking about it. I was working too much. I was neglecting my family. I was neglecting my own health because I was doing everything I could to promote this program, and was pretty much in denial about how much it was putting me in the ditch. And I think probably both Terry and Lynn picked up on I was really struggling with this. And so one day I'm sitting there in my office here at the church, and at my computer, and Terry came in and he walked over and he was standing next to me there at my desk, and I remember what we were talking about, but he looked up at that piece of paper and he goes, "What's that?" And so I explained what it was, and this was well into the process when it was looking, bleak that this thing was actually going to happen. And I said, kind of sheepishly, well, I was going to be marking the pastors on there, and, as people signed up, and that way, provide some encouragement, which that certainly didn't happen. But, some encouragement that's, that we're moving through the process and getting people signed up. And now, one of the things, I'm going to tell you a thing about Terry. And you only know this if you're around him a lot. And so Lynn could probably tell you these things, some of that around him a lot. That there are certain looks he gives that the look is, I'm thinking something, but I don't know that I'm not going to say it because it seems like this is really important to you. And one of those looks is he does this, he'll do this thing where he kind of goes like this. And I know when I get that look of, it's like he's thinking, Jeff, this is a terrible idea, but you're really excited about it, and I don't want to crush your spirit. So anyway, so he's there, and this paper is up there, and he says, well, what's that paper? And I explain it, and he goes like this. And I reach up and I grab the paper and I tear it down, and so it opened up the door for me to really explain how much I was in the ditch over this. And so as we've done so many times, we prayed and talked, and he helped me process through that. And it allowed me to realign myself back to my values, these non-negotiable commitments. Are you investing in your journey with Jesus? Well, no, I'm not, because I don't have time, because I have to give everything, all my energy to making sure this program works. Are you spending time connecting with your family? No, I'm not. I just go through the list. It was this checklist of all the things that were non-negotiable commitments that I wasn't doing, because I had this new non-negotiable commitment was that I'm going to commit to make sure that this program works. It ended up completely in the ditch. A lot of my stuff with anxiety came back, and then it just perpetuated itself. The more that I pulled away from those values, the farther I got in the ditch, and it just spiraled till it was out of control. Again, it just simply came back to the fact I was not investing in my personal values. Okay, so that was one way it didn't happen. We're going to make that point number 2, by the way. Now I'm going to move to point number 3. And this is a time where I'm hoping I've gotten far enough down the road that I've learned, maybe experientially, that I am better off when I live into those values. Some of you know, for those of you that, a lot of you I don't know. I didn't get to meet many of you. I was on my way out at HCM International when the program was starting. I had been the executive director of HCM International. I started coming to seminars. I came to my first seminar in 2006. Just got more and more involved, and then started working for Terry, and then ran HCM International. Wonderful, wonderful experience. And so coming up on a year ago, maybe 9 months ago, I was starting to get the sense that I needed to do something different, which didn't make sense to me because those of you that know me and know my heart in regards to ministry is that, like, this is it for me. I mean, life and ministry really started to click in 2006 when I came to my first formational prayer seminar. And it wasn't because Terry's magical or anything like that. It was just Jesus does things here that I hadn't experienced in other places. And so in a way, it didn't make sense that I would move out of this. So I went to my parents. My parents own a business, and they have had this business. It's a distribution business for agricultural products, which I grew up around that. I've been around that. At times I've helped them out here and there, but that's not really, ministry has always been my gig. I mean, that's the thing that I've always done vocationally. And but my dad had some health issues that were causing some difficulties, and so I said, well, I'll pitch in. And so I'm going to be transitioning out of what I'm doing here in Ashland, and so maybe 20 hours a week I'll pitch in and be part-time work for me, and do this. By the end of the second week, I was working 50 hours a week and desperately trying to pull out of everything I could pull out of, because it was obvious how much my parents needed me. And how much this business needed, because of a lot of it's just because of the different health issues that my dad's had. And so that progressed. I started working full time, essentially started running the business, and then it was about 2 years ago, 2 months ago, ultimately finished up the process of me acquiring the business. Now, I went to seminary. I went to my undergrad. I was at a Christian school, getting a religious-based degree. I went to seminary and got a counseling degree, and here I am owning and running an agricultural distribution business. Now, there was not one class in college or seminary about this. But it became obvious, and I talked a lot with people that I trusted, as spiritual people, spiritual mothers and fathers, and talked through this. And I think I need to do this. I think I have to do this. And it was confirmed, and so even though I have no experience in this, I landed in it. And for those of you who are involved in a business or running a business or anything like that, it's different than ministry. I didn't really do the math on that of how different it is. It's really different. The rules of the game are really different. And one of the things, there's this whole thing called cash flow, and that means you have to, we had I had to focus on cash flow here for HCM International, but it was steady. So for this business, there's this thing called cash flow that you have to watch to make sure you have enough money to pay your bills. And it's really harder to track. And I'm in this and working through this, and I can feel that same thing happening. It is pulling me in the ditch. I want to control. I want to do things to make sure, all of that. And I'm fortunate to be connected with somebody in that business who's a really strong believer. And we talk a lot about our faith, and we pray together, and about work and all that. And it just, like I said, it obviously became very apparent to me that I'm headed for the ditch. But what was amazing is this time I fell back on those personal values. And I recommitted myself. Okay, so my circumstances have changed. This is something I mentioned last week. My circumstances have drastically changed, but my personal values haven't. The way that I'm going to live these out is different. So I make a really strong effort, and I'm going to say probably out of weekdays, 3 to 4 weekdays, I start the day with a long walk. And not a 10-minute walk, 30, 45-minute walk. And on the walk, I'm praying, I'm meditating, deep breathing exercises, whatever it is. That is my time, my main time of connecting with the Lord. And just doing that, if I do anything else, it's centering me. And it allows me to step into a week where it's like, do we have enough money to pay all our bills this week? I think we do. But it's funny, it's like, I didn't realize, 4 or 5 customers could decide to pay their bill that week, and that means we either do or don't have enough money to pay the bills. And how much of that's outside of my control, but starting the day that way. One of my non-negotiable commitments I mentioned is living out my calling from Jesus. Now, I can't be here. I can't be a part of healing care right now, and I don't like that, because this has been so much of my life for, I guess, like 15 years or 13 years, whatever the math is. But you know what? I can teach Sunday school and lead my small group. And it's not a huge commitment of time, but it's something that allows me to do ministry. I can be intentional about, like yesterday was a day I knew I was going to have to be out on the road, and I knew I wasn't going to get back till like 7, 8 o'clock at night. So in the morning, Kelly and the girls and I, we went to Panera, and we spent 45 minutes in Panera having pastries and hot beverages together, because I knew I was going to be getting home late, and I needed that time to make that time of connecting with my family. I needed to be intentional about that. And what's amazing is this whole thing of running this business, this is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, hands down. It's not even close. But I'm not in the ditch. Like, this is right now, May and June, because it's agriculture, it's our busiest season. And I'm not in the ditch. I mean, like, that's the best testimony of my life, that I'm in the hardest time of my life and I'm not in the ditch. And so much of this is why I said, either at the beginning of this teaching or the last teaching, that articulating and committing to these personal values, this has been everything to me. My relationships, that my marriage is going to survive this business. And, how long will this business live? How long will I be in this seat with this business? I don't know. Maybe we sell it next year. Maybe I retire as the owner of JBF Distribution. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know whatever it is, my marriage is going to outlive this, because as long as I continue to commit to my personal values, and my relationships with my kids and my spirituality and all those things, they're going to outlive this, not because my circumstances are great. They're challenging, like everyone's life is challenging, but they're going to survive this because I'm committing to those personal values. So, well, thank you for indulging me. I guess, that's my testimony for right now. So I don't necessarily have questions, but I have some tasks. Now, I understand that, some of you have already done like the little retreat thing, 1 day or day and a half, 2 days, I don't remember what it ended up being, retreat to work on these action A pieces, and one of those is values. Some of you may be done with this. And I almost kind of felt silly like putting questions together. So what I want to encourage you to do for questions 1 and 2, if you have not done the work of articulating these values, these non-negotiable commitments, I want to encourage you to, for what would be questions 1 or 2, to just make a list, brainstorm. I think the first time I did it, when Terry was helping me with this, it was maybe, 10, 12 things I wrote down. Obviously, I had to shorten it, but it just was, I just wrote everything down, everything that came to mind. And then, so then what would be questions 3 and 4 on the second time you work during the week, just work on refining that list and see if you can get it down to 4 or 5 or 6 non-negotiable commitments. And then I want to encourage you to reach out to your rooted leader if you haven't done this already and share with them. You may have a time where you do that already or have done that, but share these commitments with someone and let them encourage you in it. So we went a little long on this teaching. So hopefully that was all right, but I hope you'll be able to pick some things up from the experiences I had. And I just say it again, whatever it takes for you to articulate and live out of those values, it's an investment that is priceless. It was good to be with you. This is my last teaching with you, so it was wonderful. Thank you for letting me be a part of your journey, and may the Lord continue to bless you in all things.